Blüster is the name of the album. The song is Confrontation Part 2. The band is the Baharibas, and the podcast is Monster Kid Radio. The podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. The writer, host, producer is Derek M. Cook, and the thanks go to the band, the Baharibas, for letting us play their music on this week's episode. You can find out more about them over at thebaharibas.bandcamp.com or follow the link in the show notes when you're done listening to this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Thanks for being here this week. I'm excited to have you here. And once again, we have a guest host, Steve Turek. And before his medical stuff, recorded an episode with fellow podcaster and friend of the show, Alistair Hughes, about the movie Terror of Mechagodzilla, the 1975 film classic directed by Ishirō Honda. I'm excited for this one. I don't talk about kaiju on the podcast nearly enough. I know every year we talk about doing Kai July, and maybe we'll do that again this year. My life kind of evens out a little bit. My life right now is a little bit up in the air. We were supposed to be in Kuwait right now, but we're actually still in Arizona. If you see the most recent YouTube video from several weeks ago now, Beth and I talk a little bit about this over at the Team Death YouTube channel. But the bottom line is, the TLDR, as the kids say, is that Beth got hurt working at the haunt and now has a partial tear in her ACL and MCL. So we came back to the States early. At this point, we are about to fly back to the Pacific Northwest, and we're going to be consulting with her doctors to see what we need to do about getting that resolved. Because so many things are up in the air, I am so thankful and grateful that Steve Turek took the time to record so many guest episodes of Monster Kid Radio for us. So you're going to hear Steve and Alistair talk about Terror of Mechagodzilla. Of course, it's not an episode of Monster Kid Radio if you're not going to hear something from Mark Matzke with his Beta Capsule review, where he's taking a look at every single episode of Ultraman. Right now, he is on the back half of the Return of Ultraman, so you've got that coming up. Also, you've got Kenny's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland, and because we're doing a little bit of kaiju stuff this week, I thought this would be a good time for Beth and I to share our thoughts on Godzilla Minus One. And we didn't do it ourselves because I actually put the call out and had a few people call in their thoughts on Godzilla Minus One as well. So we've got all of that coming up right about now.
It's a monster marathon, now all in one gigantic show. 3 of the newest and most exciting monster hits, starring Earth champion and protector Godzilla. First, thrill the Godzilla on Monster Island with more monsters than have ever appeared on the screen at one time. Then it's the action-packed Godzilla versus the Cosmic Monster. And finally, the classic Godzilla versus Megalon. All 3 in one colossal show. Rated G.
It's 1966. The space race is on. The Cold War is heating up, and giant monsters are destroying Japan. KAIJU Attack, from award-winning author Stephen D. Sullivan. Now available in all ebook formats on Amazon, Smashwords, Drive-Thru Fiction, and other quality outlets. Find more info at daikaijuattack.com. sdsullivan.com, and the KAIJU Attack group on Facebook. Join the action today.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. Return of Ultraman, Episode 40, The Phantom Snow Woman. Original air date, January 14th, 1972. Rumiko takes Jiro to an alpine cabin, where he sees a creepy, pale-skinned woman outside in the bitter cold. The sighting is a precursor to the disappearance of a newlywed couple visiting the same resort cabin. At the same time, Go and Monster Attack Team are learning about a series of disappearances involving young couples in the mountainous region. When he learns of Jiro's sighting, Go convinces MAT to concentrate their investigation on that area, and it pays off. They shoot down a UFO, which was transporting the missing couple, an action which ultimately exposes a sinister plot by aliens from Saturn. The Phantom Snow Woman is not what she appears to be, and under the control of the Saturn aliens, enters into combat with Ultraman, with devastating results. The 40th episode of Return of Ultraman is part 2 of the brief winter horror series which aired in January 1972, and it makes extensive use of real-life snowy locations to great effect. Not only is the wintry landscape visually appealing, but it grounds the show in the real world, and leads to the dramatic sight of orange-suited MAT members working their way through the snow-white environment. The use of the Snow Woman as a kind of yokai, or legendary ghost, is effectively spooky, undercut a bit by the revelation that she's really alien monster Snowgon, but fearsome in either form. In fact, her battle with Ultraman is the most jaw-dropping so far in the series. As you watch, you may wonder, did I just see what I think I just saw? Trust yourself. You really did see body parts being tossed around. Whose body parts? You'll have to see the Phantom Snow Woman to find out. For Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matzke reporting.
Mightiest monster of all time in his greatest adventure. King Kong escapes. Can the sinister Doctor Who enslave King Kong's fantastic strength? Can King Kong defy the might of modern artillery, tanks, missiles? See King Kong battle primordial monsters, an air armada, submarines, and finally see King Kong battle man's most evil creation, a robot Kong of steel. In the battle of the century. All new. More fantastic than ever. King Kong escapes, thrilling in Technicolor.
Within the uncharted depths of waters surrounding a group of islands off the 50th parallel lies man's most formidable challenge. The awesome awakening of prehistoric monsters long thought extinct. Savage and deadly, their one hope is to rule our planet as they once had thousands of years back. Giant against giant. The ultimate battle. Godzilla versus Megalon. Science was baffled and powerless. A terror-stricken humanity knew that it was on the brink of total destruction. A once proud civilization now had to place its trust and hope in Godzilla. and his powerful ally, Robot Man. In concert, they would fight this evil in a duel to the death. Battling by day, battling by night, it was more than a race against time. This war was an all-out effort whose ultimate purpose was to save our planet from total destruction. Now came the moment of truth. The ultimate battle. Titan against Titan, giant against giant in the most spectacular battle yet. You'll see it all in Godzilla vs. Megalon.
Hi, Derek and the Monster Kid. This is just calling in. I'm calling about a movie that's a little bit outside the NPR purview because it's a 2023 movie, but I'm talking Godzilla Minus One. And this is flat out the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. It might be the best movie I saw in 2023. Not necessarily the one I enjoyed the most, but certainly the best story, the best well done. I heard it only had a budget of $15 million, and that's just unbelievable because it looks as good as anything that Hollywood is doing for, $500 million or more. It is a period piece. Without spoiling anything, it starts at the tail end of World War II, and I kind of hate the word reimagining because it gets thrown around a lot, but it is a reimagining of the original Godzilla story, about how the monster, comes to Japan and the people that have to defeat it. But unlike the original, these characters especially the protagonists, our POV characters, are so believable and they're so human. I cried with sadness during this movie because of things that happen with the human. The monsters on screen very little, which is, great. One thing, you don't see many flaws in the special effects. If the monsters on screen, Spielberg taught us all that. But anyway, I'm sorry. I know Derek hasn't had to see this on the big screen, probably will, and that breaks my heart. But if you did, I'm so happy for you. If you did see it on the big screen, make sure you see it when it comes out streaming, or if you're able to buy it physical copy. I cannot recommend it enough. Did see the trailer last night for the Godzilla Kong movie that's coming out from Hollywood. Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Looks like it's going to be utterly ridiculous. It's a turn your brain off at the door kind of movie. And that's fun too. But Godzilla Minus One, there was one thing that I thought, okay, this isn't believable. But everything else, terrific. I don't think I've spoiled anything. I hope I haven't, because you need to see this and experience it for yourself. Anyway.
So you're going to hear from some people who have called in about Godzilla Minus One here shortly, but we wanted to take a second with Beth to talk about our experience seeing Godzilla Minus One. We saw it pretty much like the next day we got back into the States, because they weren't showing it in Kuwait at all.
Yeah, that was a really hard wait, let me tell you guys, but it was definitely a priority when we got back here to the States.
Yeah, and we went to go see it here in Arizona. I forget the name of the theater, but it was a pretty decent crowd, and I was so impressed. It lived up to all the hype and then some for me.
It's only the probably 7th or 8th Godzilla film I've seen, and wow, it really is deserving of attention this award season, and really was quite a masterpiece. I mean, Godzilla was great and he was neat, but that film held its own even during the parts where he wasn't on.
Which there's a lot of, and that's something that people always complain about Godzilla movies, and maybe I'm just not looking in the right spots, but I didn't see that this time around where people were complaining about there not being enough Godzilla on screen. And I think that speaks highly of the non-Godzilla action, the human drama, the human story, and everything else going on. You didn't need Godzilla visually present.
Not at all moments, no, not at all. And, you know, it really picks up just after the fall of Japan at the end of World War II, and we see the repercussions of the war and of the choices that the United States made in cities across Japan, and what that had done to the landscape and the people and how they were living. And it really, I think, is a nice way to go back and give an early look to Godzilla at the beginning of the nuclear era.
Definitely early, and this is something that didn't really occur to me while I was watching it, but I did see later in an interview, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes. There's a Japanese film vlog, YouTube blog, podcast thing that Matthew Rashley, Matt sent me a link to, and it's the director talking about Godzilla Minus One with the host, and they're just having a love fest over all things Godzilla. They pointed out in there that this Godzilla movie is the earliest set Godzilla movie. Even the original Godzilla takes place years after World War II. This takes place right at the end of World War II, so chronologically, this is the earliest Godzilla we've ever had a movie set during.
Well, and if you know your Godzilla, you know that all of the movies are, in a way, a metaphor for the nuclear arms race between the East and the West and Asia and North America. And so seeing this one right at the beginning was really a unique experience. I even read in one article where somebody said it's the perfect follow.
That's a double feature, and I kind of want to see a fan edit. I don't know how that would work, but I want to see a fan edit putting Oppenheimer and Godzilla Minus One together.
I also noticed that some of the theaters across the country, including our own home theater, The Joy in Tigard, Oregon, were showing Godzilla Minus One in black and white, and that's something I'd love to see in the future. We haven't been able to get back to Portland yet to do that, but it's something I'd love to see because I think
Godzilla Minus One Minus Color is what they're calling it. It was only a very limited engagement. I don't know if we're going to be able to catch it by the time we get back to Portland.
I'm kind of hoping it'll be on a Blu-ray.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Or we can watch it streaming somewhere. Or that it does so well they extend the engagement, because Godzilla Minus One was only supposed to run a very short period of time, but it did so well.
I think the last I saw it was the third highest grossing foreign film ever in the U.S.
Is that? Wow.
Oh, and climbing.
That's amazing. Now, it did get nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, which is fantastic. There's been a lot of talk about how it should have been nominated for other categories as well. I actually read online somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, it might have been kind of an unsubstantiated rumor, that Toho did not submit this for Best Foreign Language Film, which I think is a shame because it's so good. I think it could have gotten a nom.
Yeah, that was something, that it didn't even occur to me until about a third of the way through. I was like, oh, wait, this isn't in English, but I'm enjoying it just fine, no problem.
Yeah, it's in Japanese, and it's so good. The performances are so good, and having watched that interview again that Matt told me about, and I'll mention it in detail later when I can refer to it on my screen and tell everybody about it here. Again, follow the link in the show notes. So watching that, the director has so much love for not just Godzilla, but for film in general. And he talks about how Godzilla Minus One is kind of like the culmination of everything that he's done up until that point, that everything has kind of fed into this. And now I want to see more about that guy's filmography and check out some of his stuff.
Definitely.
And I love that Godzilla is kind of opening up people's, at least my eyes, to other films that I would have never even stumbled across.
And I think it's going to create more space in the movie world for foreign films, for not low-budget films, but reasonably budgeted films.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be a blockbuster, blowout.
I mean, $15 million, that's nothing to sneeze at, but in terms of a movie that's had the impact that this movie has had with audiences and critics, that's, a smaller budget than, say, like the legendary Godzilla films.
Yeah. or anything in the MCU or
Star Wars, any of that stuff. Yeah, and it's really a bona fide classic film. I do want to own this one physical media-wise when it comes out on Blu-ray. It'll probably come out on Blu-ray in Japan first, and I am so grateful I have an all-region Blu-ray player. I just hope that Japanese release has English subtitles. I really want to see it. Now, as far as the black and white version goes, Kevin Slick did see it in black and white, and he's got some thoughts on it. I'm real curious to see it in black and white. I'd love to see it again in color.
Me too. That's actually my first thing I thought when walking out of the theater was, I can't wait to see it again.
There you go. There you go. So put on the poll quotes on the movie poster. It's neat. I can't wait to see it again. Elizabeth Cook.
There you go.
This is totally rocking, Kenny Beat, totally unscripted, singing the praises of Godzilla Minus One. I found this film to be totally fantastic and got a very rare 5-star rating from me, which means it's life-changing. Was so emotionally well done. It just topped everything Godzilla ever done before. I love the Showa era Godzilla for the nostalgic reasons. It was such a big part of my childhood. This film just smashes that with its emotional human drama that it brings to Godzilla. And I was just amazed by it. And when I heard it was made for a paltry $15 million, it's absolutely incredible. The effects and everything. One of the things I haven't heard mentioned much, but I kind of like the beginning, a Harryhausen style. Let's show you a monster right away before getting started, instead of the King Kong long build-up before the monster. I really like that, because the monster becomes right away part of the human drama throughout the film. And so it was, I thought that was an interesting touch. It brought you right into the action. And switched it up a bit. It was a while before we saw Godzilla again, but it really set up nicely the human drama. So, again, 5 stars for Godzilla Minus One. I'm totally rocking KD. I love this movie.
Hi, Derek. Welcome back to the good old United States. You mentioned that you're going to be doing a program on Godzilla Minus One. I'm looking forward to. This is Kevin Flick, by the way, calling you. And I loved Godzilla Minus One. I'm actually planning on going to see this week Godzilla Minus One Minus Color to see what it looks like in black and white. 2 things I'll mention that I thought were really important as to why this film felt so great to me, why I enjoyed it so much. 1, it had a human story. It had compelling human characters that I cared about and wanted to see what happened to them. And 2, it was very sparing use of the monster. We didn't see Godzilla from start to finish. We saw Godzilla here and there, and whenever Godzilla appeared, it was exciting, it was dramatic, it followed the story, it furthered the story. I was reminded very much of the original Gojira, 1954, in that there's a compelling human story in that, and we don't see the monster all the time. You need to withhold the tasties, as we used to say. You need to withhold, the thrill every once in a while and build it up. And I thought this movie did that wonderfully. And I'm looking forward to seeing it in black and white, as I mentioned. I'll probably give you a call and tell you what I thought of it that way. Hope you have a great next show and everything is going wonderful for you all. And hope to see you again sometime soon.
So after Kevin called in and told me the Godzilla Minus One Minus Color, he actually sent an email, and I thought I'd read the email here. Hi, Derek. Went to see the black and white version of Godzilla Minus One last night. Have you seen it? Unfortunately, the answer is no. I thought the black and white worked well, especially in the post-war Tokyo scenes, giving things a more gritty and bleak look. I love black and white. Why do we call it black and white when it's really shades of gray? Films and photography in general, so it's no surprise I'd like the look of this. That said, I wouldn't urge anyone to go out of their way to see this version. I enjoyed it last night, and that was at least as much for seeing the film again as the fact that this time it was in black and white. It wasn't like the black and white version was a revelation. It was a great moving, going experience because it's inherently a great movie for all the reasons I mentioned in my voicemail. Well, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry, man. I had heard that the filmmakers actually did more than just turn off the color, that they went through and recolor graded the whole thing, scene by scene, shot by shot, to really enhance the look of the black and white pseudo-photography at this point. I still want to see it in black and white, and I know some other people have seen it as well. And actually, I've read that it doesn't hold up the same way, that it doesn't have the same movie. I don't know. I don't know if I'm making much sense because I haven't had enough coffee this morning, but thanks for writing in and letting us know. Either way, I still want to see the movie. Jeff actually went to go see it in black and white as well, and he called in his thoughts, so we'll let him end out the segment with his call.
Hi, Derek and the Monster Kids. This is Jeff calling in because I saw Godzilla Minus One again, but this time I saw Godzilla Minus One minus color. So they've done a re-release of the Godzilla Minus One movie where it is black and white. Like as if this was a movie released shortly after the events, one might say. Since the entire movie takes place starting in 1945. It was spectacular. Yeah, I have one minor complaint, and it's just I'm not even going to talk about it. I might have talked about it in my first voicemail. But this movie is a 10 out of 10 for me. This time, the soundtrack, the score stood out to me more. And it's really incredible. I haven't looked up to see if it's available for digital download. As far as getting on CD, it looks like it has to be imported. So that's a little expensive, but I may end up doing that anyway because, oh man, the music is just awesome. And I'm glad I saw it black and white. I think in the future I'll watch it in color. They've done this with other movies like Logan and Mad Max Fury Road, where they, released in color first, then they put out a black and white version. And I think putting Logan in black and white, for me, hit better than this did. I like the nostalgia idea of the Godzilla black and white, or Godzilla Minus One black and white. But when I watch it again, I'm sure I'll just watch it in color. But yeah, this movie is so hard. It is so emotional. Yes, I cried again. Even knowing how things would turn out, I still cried. It is an emotional movie, and it's endorsed by the Oscars, of course, because it's not an American movie. So, what do the Oscars care? But yeah, when you can, see it. If you don't see it in the theater, rent it as soon as it's available. It's amazing. Anyway, have a great day, my monster friends and monster fiends. And I'll talk to you kids the best.
Godzilla, king of the monsters, whose death ray blasts the city from the face of the earth before your very eyes.
Godzilla alive!
Stalking across the world, crushing all before it.
Is Godzilla fantasy or a prophecy of doom? For the answer, see Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
A tale of horror more fantastic than any ever written by Jules Verne.
More terrifying than any ever shown on the screen.
Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Incredible titan of terror.
A story to stun the mind as a gargantuan creature of the sea surges up on a tidal wave of destruction to wreak vengeance on the earth.
Godzilla,
King of the Monsters.
fantastic beyond comprehension.
Tripping beyond compare.
Astounding beyond belief.
The mightiest monster of them all.
See Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Godzilla Godzilla versus the Thing. Godzilla, monster of monsters, and the mysterious Thing defy man's mightiest weapons. See Godzilla versus the Thing in color and Terrascope.
Hello there, Monster Kid radio heads. This is Kenny with a look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. Today's film, The Terror of Mechagodzilla, was not featured in FM, but its stars were included when the film's predecessor, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, was covered in Famous Monsters 135 from July of 1977. Here is the article's brief introduction. Godzilla is 21, born on the American screen in 1956. Good old Gotti has been busy ever since, destroying Tokyo, fighting King Kong, siring a son, getting mixed up with Ghidra, etc. Now, CinemaShare's releasing company brings the big boy to the USA once again. This time in Japan's answer to the $6 million man, the 600 million yen monster. After that, we are treated to a full-length, spoiler-filled synopsis. Here is a highlight. The action-filled first appearance of the Big G. Godzilla attacks the city. Ghidra, the three-headed monster, protector of the land, is awakened and does battle with Godzilla. The people witness this battle of titans with awe and fright. Godzilla wins, but now an astonishing occurrence. A second Godzilla emerges from the ocean. Godzilla versus Godzilla. The monsters meet and clash. In the ensuing battle, the first Godzilla flashes his flaming breath on an oil refinery and blows it up. Some of the burning oil falls on the skin of Godzilla number 1. Godzilla's skin begins to blister and peel, but there is no flesh and blood and bone beneath. Instead, there is a metallic surface. It is not Godzilla at all. It is a bionic monster in disguise. The real Godzilla battles bionic monster. While unbeknownst to the world, every move is being monitored on a TV screen. By whom? By aliens. Furthermore, the aliens are controlling bionic monster's every move. Bionic monster can fly, dive, launch rockets, shoot laser beams, and emanate death rays. A deadly foe for Godzilla. That is all for this week's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. We will have more next time. For MKR, this is Kenny saying adios.
Bionic monster, a menacing giant, an awesome machine, unleashed with a deadly task. Godzilla, the only hope for Earth's survival. Godzilla versus the Bionic Monster. Godzilla strives to win supremacy in a fight to the end. Will Godzilla triumph? The Earth survive? Godzilla versus the Bionic Monster, an earth-shaking movie. Rated G.
Nothing the screen has ever shown before can surpass the thrills of Ghidra, the three-headed monster. Created from an atomic fireball hurled from outer space, Ghidra, the three-headed monster, threatens man's very existence on Earth. Ghidra, the three-headed monster, battles Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan for mastery of the world. Men quake before the terror of their unleashed fury. All new, all never to be forgotten. A new high in screen terror.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monster Kid Radio. This is Steve Turek, a.k.a. Steve Rivers, Jones' brother, who's subbing in for Derek while he's away in Kuwait with Beth, building haunts of who knows what type. You can follow along in their little web series if you donated to their Kickstarter to see what exactly they are doing over there. And I hope they're both having a good time. But as people know, I've been coming in to sub in for a bunch of different episodes, and I reached out to a lot of people. And one of the people I reached out to all the way in New Zealand is Alistair Hughes. How you doing today, Alistair?
Konnichiwa, Turek-san. Doing really well, thank you. Turning Japanese. I think I'm turning Japanese. I really think so.
Well, you're closer to Japan than I am, so, it's, who knows?
Exactly. Actually, before I went off on that tangent, should we maybe say why?
Well, I was going to say, the movie you picked, and I can't believe you picked this one, Terror of Mechagodzilla, because you don't usually care for Godzilla too much. Listeners don't know, but on Facebook Messenger, Alistair and I had this thing going on where he's a big King Kong fan, I'm a big Godzilla fan, and so we're always ribbing each other about King Kong and Godzilla, sending these different Facebook messages or memes and all these other stuff. And so I reached out to Alistair, and he picked Terror of Mechagodzilla and something about, I want to see what this whole big G thing is about.
Well, yes. I mean, as you obviously know, Steve, it's good-natured fun. Obviously, I am a huge King Kong fan, but I love Godzilla as well. He has an undeniable place in cinema history, and even someone who pretends not to like him, you just can't miss his presence, his looming presence in history. And it's been really interesting to dig into that, because I didn't realize that this movie that I picked, for reasons that I'll talk about later, is actually quite significant in Godzilla history. But I'm sure you know all about that already.
Yeah, it's the 15th Godzilla movie and the last one in the Showa era. So, and I know it's in the 70s, and Derek normally doesn't go in the late 60s, but a Godzilla film, especially in the 70s, they pretty much could easily fit in the type of movies that Monster Kid Radio would normally do.
And if it doesn't, well, we're just going to make it, aren't we? We're going to stomp it in.
We can stomp it in, and Derek's upset. I'm sorry, Derek. Oops. But no, he did know ahead of time what movie, and he didn't say anything, and he was fine with it. Now. Well,
no news is good news sometimes.
Yes. Now, when he hears this episode, he might have a different opinion and be like, "Oh, why?
Why? What have I done?"
But at least he's far away from me currently at the time he'll hear this. He'll be in Kuwait, and I'll be in the United States. So he's a good distance away from you in New Zealand. So you have to
exactly.
So it'd be hard for him to get to.
I'm really looking forward to hearing how he gets on over there. That's a real adventure for him. He'd be really excited. Fantastic stuff.
And just before we get started, one thing I want to let listeners know is, depending on when this episode goes out, you already have a book out there that's been there for a while. If it goes out early enough, it could be in time for Christmas. If it goes out late, it could be in time for somebody's Valentine's Day gift. If they're a Hammer movie fan, Info
Gothic.
Yes, Info Gothic. The unauthorized
Info Gothic.
Hammer history.
Yeah, the unauthorized graphic guide to Hammer horror. Thanks, Steve. Yes. Interesting, isn't it? As we do Hammerama, I actually find myself picking up various reference books to research, and I'm kind of mildly surprised to find that I picked my own book up and actually find it useful. No, seriously, I put 2 years of my life into that book and loved every minute of it. As I've said many times before, I really wanted to produce a book about Hammer, but in a way that no one else had before. And rather than writing screeds of text, which many people who are more knowledgeable and better writers than me have already done, I decided to use the mystic science of infographics. So basically, I have tackled all of Hammer's horror, science fiction, prehistoric films, but in the form of an infographic, which basically visually conveys information with illustrations, graphics, charts, text, and it's been an absolute joy, because the thing about Hammer is that it is an interconnected universe. Eat your heart out, Marvel. Before you came along, there was the Hammer cinematic universe, and it was an absolute delight to explore it.
And I'm hoping one day you either do another book of that ilk. It could be with Hammer, it could be with Universal, it could be with Doctor Who, it could be with James Bond. I don't care. Just take my money.
Well, thanks, Steve. It may have been done already, but what we're talking about today is just ripe for that sort of treatment, because Godzilla has a very strongly interconnected universe, doesn't he?
You know, my heart just skipped a beat when you just said that. I would love a Godzilla infographic, Godzilla.
Exactly. I mean, it seems such an obvious idea. I'd be really surprised if someone hasn't done it already. And if they haven't, well, I've just blown myself out of the water by broadcasting to a potential artist author about what a good idea it would be. So no doubt I will be scooped. But this is a really complex and rich universe. I mean, this, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, is this the second time, Terror of Mechagodzilla, is this the second time that Godzilla faced Mechagodzilla?
I believe so. This is the sequel to the first one, and
it's a direct sequel.
It's a direct sequel, and not to the first movie, but to the first Mechagodzilla appearance.
Yeah,
and the listeners know neither one of us are Godzilla experts. I'm a lifelong fan. Grew up watching Godzilla movies on Saturdays when it was raining. I would sit at home and watch the monster movie theater. You know, and most of the monster movies that it played, it seemed like every other one was a Godzilla film. Or every third one, so it was always it was Godzilla centric. Or if Godzilla wasn't on the monster theater, Sci-Fi Theater, a lot of times would show Godzilla. So sometimes I'd get two Godzilla movies in on one Saturday on a rainy day, and it was something to grow up watching and getting that Godzilla fix, so to speak. And it was very enjoyable seeing all these growing up and enjoying them. And so I have a fond history with Godzilla. I love all the Godzilla films. There's none of them I dislike. I've rewatched all of them and that kind of stuff, because when Alistair threw out a couple of movies to me, the first one he said that he wanted to do was Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, and then he switched to Terror of Mechagodzilla, which we'll get to in a minute. And I will let people know, Ghidorah is my favorite of all the Godzilla movies. So that is my number one. And I could have influenced him, because he did ask me if it was okay to switch. And I said, go with what you want, because I don't want to start off right off the bat with my favorite one. You know, it's nice to start off with one of the ones that's in the middle tier for me, so to speak, and that I enjoy still. But, you start off with your favorite, then it's only going in for a personal thing, downhill from there. Where you start off in the with ones you like, which again is all of them. There's one I like a little less than right, but that was an American production, and it's nowhere near the Showa era, and I will not mention that movie anymore.
I think I know what you're referring to, and obviously that's one of the ones that I've seen. No, it's nice to hear about your connection with Godzilla. He's obviously very close to your heart, and it goes back a long, long way for you. It's similar with me with the Mighty Kong. So I understand. But yeah, this is something that I don't know a lot about, so I'm going to be relying on you, Steve. But I will say just off the bat that I enjoyed this film.
Well, I'm glad you did, because you always want somebody's Godzilla experience to be a positive experience. And
well, exactly.
And just to let listeners know, we both watched the same version, which is I think it's the Saperstein version, which has the 6-7 minute history type thing right off the bat, where it's showing clips from a few of these other movies, and it's giving us little oral history of Godzilla for newbies, and then it goes into the movie proper, and that kind of stuff. So that's the version we watched. I chose that one to watch because that's the one I grew up seeing. So you want, so I wanted to stick close to where I was doing my roots. I do have that version and the Japanese version, but there's those two versions. Besides that introduction part, the differences in the movies are very small, and so it's not really was not significant for information wise. Yes, it would have been different to hear the Japanese the actors' voices coming from instead of the dubbing voices, those kind of things. But I chose to go that route, and I believe you did the same thing.
Yes, that's very lucky, Steve, because that's obviously the version that I saw. And being a newbie to Godzilla, even though I've heard that it's not necessarily completely accurate, a little introduction at the beginning was really useful for me. And I understand that the version that we're watching, you see a little bit less of Katsura as well, but I'm sure fans of Godzilla will know what I'm referring to.
Well, that's why I have the Japanese version also. So
moving on.
But yeah, moving on. So listeners get an idea. We're not going to go with this as an expert level and talk about minute details of film history with it. We're going to go in our Hammerama type approach that we do on the podcast we do together, where we're going to talk about things that we enjoyed with the movie, other things that we like, and that kind of stuff. And we're also going to talk about the movie poster, the Japanese version. So it gives you an idea. We're going to bring our Hammerama flavor to Godzilla. So for this episode, it's Godzilla-rama.
Godzilla-rama. Can I begin by telling you how I first heard about this film and why I've chosen it?
Please.
Okay. I live in New Zealand, obviously, and Godzilla never had a big effect on our culture. We're sort of, especially back in the 1970s, which is when I was a young lad, and that's what I'm talking about now, much more influenced by Britain, which was still regarded by some people even as the mother country, even though they'd never been there. Anyway, one of the comics that I read when I was a wee lad was called Monster Fun. Now, British comics are very, very different to American comics in all kinds of ways, and this is a whole fascinating subject which someone else can tackle. But with British comics, around school holiday times, you'd sometimes get what was called a holiday special, which was a larger format with more pages and sometimes special features. So the 1976 Monster Fun Holiday Special had a 3-page insert about a movie which to me looked like one of the most exciting things ever. And this movie was called, Steve, Monsters from an Unknown Planet. So people listening will probably think, well, what the hell has that got to do with Godzilla? Well, in fact, as real fans probably know, that was the British title for Terror of Mechagodzilla. So this comic had this 3-page insert of the most exciting photographs I'd ever seen in my life. Usually it's Mechagodzilla, Titanosaurus, and Godzilla, and they look like they're all furiously fighting with each other, and there's tanks firing at them, and there's Titanosaurus biting Godzilla, and it just looked amazing. Unfortunately, even though I got the comic in New Zealand, I knew that the chances of me ever actually getting to see the film were pretty slim. But it kind of triggered something in my tiny little brain, and that is I really loved the design of Titanosaurus. it just really appealed to me for some reason. So what I would do is that I would draw a great big picture of him on a sheet of cardboard, and I'd cut out the cardboard, so I'd basically have this figure of Titanosaurus. And I remember I actually made 2 of these. I lost one of them. Somehow it fell out of my school bag, and I just wonder what went through someone's head when they found this cardboard Titanosaurus lying on the ground. Probably something along the lines of, what the? Anyway, this 3-page feature was in black and white. But when I drew Titanosaurus, obviously because I was a kid and probably using crayons, I made him really, really colorful. And it was kind of interesting that when I finally saw color images, I found that Titanosaurus, unlike a lot of the kaiju, especially sludgy colored Godzilla, Titanosaurus is actually brightly colored. He's really striking looking. And when I try and think back, try and reconnect with my child brain as to why he appealed to me, I think it's because I like seahorses. I've always loved seahorses. And to me, he has a little bit of that look. And also, now that we're in the 21st century, he kind of makes me think of, he's like the Spinosaurus to Godzilla's T-Rex in Jurassic Park 3. He's bigger and taller, and he's got the longer snout. So yes, that is a not-so-brief history on how I first heard about this film and why Titanosaurus appealed to me so much.
Oh, I was like to say, that's pretty wild, because the color, and that was one of the things I was noticing, when you're watching it now and you're paying attention to it because you're going to be talking about it for a podcast, you're paying attention to things in a little different ways. And I was noticing how there are so many different colors in the costume of Titanosaurus. Yeah. And with you bringing up a couple of things, it started to make me wonder if the designer was going for an aquatic type feel, like with the fish scales, and how some fish, there are some fish out there with those different colors. And I know you noticed from doing different books that you've done for children's illustration. And I know you also know your butterflies, because you had to paint a bunch of those.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
With the fish part, like the scales, and I thought that could be just a tie-in in a loose way, because he's more of an aquatic type animal or beast, and which does go to the surface. So he has the amphibian quality, but we were first introduced to him totally underwater, doing all of his things against a submarine, showing.
That's right. Yes.
And that kind of thing. So you think of it, I think of him more aquatic because of that. And then when he gets to the surface, you can see the coloring better, because when he's in the water, it's muted as much. Yeah. And you see that shiny scales. And I'm really thinking the fish analogy, and I like your seahorse part with it. So it's very striking of a monster.
Well, that's exactly it, Steve. But from what I understand, is this his only appearance in a Godzilla film?
I think he might have had one other appearance in a film.
Okay.
It might have been Final Wars or something like that. Final Wars, they had
yes.
They had a huge amount of monsters that were in it, and some of them were in there for very brief little things. So
is Final Wars the one that even has an appearance by your favorite Godzilla that you're not going to talk about, the American version from the 1990s?
Yeah.
Was that Final Wars?
Well, they called him Zilla. I called him Zilla, and I love it because
Zilla,
he got taken out real quick, and
yes.
And that was the best. That was the best Zilla appearance in the history of. and just because you brought it up, I will say that Godzilla film, I enjoy that movie if you take it away from being a Godzilla film, because to me it's not Godzilla. It doesn't really look like Godzilla, act like Godzilla. It's more of a giant dinosaur coming in. So I think of it more as the Ray Harryhausen film. What is it? 20,000 Phantoms or 20,000 whatever. 20,000 the Beast for 20,000 Phantoms. The beast that comes up and walks around.
Yep.
I look at it as more as that, and I think that's to me more similar to it.
That's an interesting reference, because from what I understand, there may not have been a Godzilla without the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. But anyway, maybe that's a bit provocative. No, I see where you're coming from.
But just let people know, I don't know if he ever appeared. I'd have to really rewatch Final Wars or look it up to see if he. So this could be his one and done appearance, but you never know. They're still making Godzilla movies and TV show and stuff like that, so there could be a Titanosaurus rebirth, which would be kind of cool.
Well, it would be kind of cool, and if he doesn't have an expensive price tag on him like some of the big name kaijus, maybe Legendary Pictures might be able to purchase Titanosaurus, because I'd love to see an updated modern version of him. They could get that neck working properly. That'd be amazing. But tell me, Steve, if indeed you do like it, what do you like about this film as someone who's far more familiar with Godzilla?
Well, for one, I love this design of Mechagodzilla. The show designs of Mechagodzilla are just the best ones. I mean, we saw Godzilla versus King Kong, and which was a nice design of Mechagodzilla, but it's nowhere near the sleek, cool robot functionality that you think of with Mechagodzilla. I mean, this is just something that is intimidating. It's sexy. It's cool. You know, you want a toy version of it, or a little statue, definitely. And the other one, the more recent rendition, it looks nice, but it doesn't have that staying power to me. Now, that could be because I grew up, this is what the version I grew up seeing all the time. So, I am biased in my opinion in that, and I mean, it's just the way it is. But you have Mechagodzilla there, you have Godzilla, and then, of course, you have the Titanosaurus, as we talked about already, who's really like the main monster, screen time wise, I think, through this, because you get to see him, going against the humans in the submarine, and you see, I mean, yes, you do see Mechagodzilla getting worked on, but I'm talking, if you don't count the scenes where he's being repaired, so to speak, I think it, screen time wise, it's the Titanosaurus and Godzilla, Mechagodzilla are kind of tied for second, we're pretty close to the same amount of screen time in that part. And the suit actors that are doing it just do a really good job of playing it off. It's 1 against 2. The humans do have an effect in this movie, which is nice. They actually are able to keep Titanosaurus at bay with one of their weapons and work it really well. So which is unusual. Usually, I mean, they do some things, but they don't always do a lot. In this case, they did a whole heck of a lot, and really it was the humans that, in a sense, took out Mechagodzilla. So in some ways, I enjoy that because it shows the humans being proactive and being resourceful. But on the other hand, I don't like it because it kind of takes away the victory, like, well, Godzilla only won because they did this or that. And Godzilla was winning against Mechagodzilla before he pulled the head off, and you see this other secondary brain type thing. Well, really, all Godzilla has to do is get one punch in or one breath weapon in, and it's gone. So I mean, it's just a matter of time before he'd finish off Mechagodzilla, which could be like one punch later once he got close. So I think he would have won, but it kind of took you took the victory here. Godzilla had victory, and they just stole it from him. And he's like, I get to still destroy the carcass, but he doesn't get to do the kill shot, so to speak. So I kind of disappointed a little bit in that, but I understood why they did it.
Interesting. I guess, this script was written by woman, from what I understand, which was rare for the Godzilla movies. And it seems to me that she is putting focus on the human characters, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I found the first legendary Godzilla film very difficult to watch because it kept cutting, sometimes at the most climactic moments, to the human characters who were just so dull and uninteresting that I found it incredibly frustrating. This film, I feel it's done right. The human characters are really interesting, especially Katsura. We both love Katsura. She, in many ways, she is the star of the film as well. And I love the espionage side. I love the fact that you almost had a kind of buddy cop feel with the two main male characters. I love Dr. Mifune. He was a wonderful, eccentric performance and really, really watchable. Although I'm a little bit concerned that it seems that in the academic circles that he moved in, if your fellow scientists disagree with you, it seems they don't just politely tell you so, but they beat the crap out of you. So no wonder he's feeling bitter. But yes, I think in this case, I really didn't mind it when they cut to the human characters and when we spent time with them, because they were all really, really interesting and, as far as I can tell, really well performed as well.
The human story, and that to me is always one of the key things for a good Godzilla film. You're always going to have the solid suit acting and the action. That's always going to be, for the most part, a constant for me for the Godzilla films. But as the human side of the story, is that going to work? Because for all intents and purposes, that is the bulk of the movie. You know, the bulk of the movie is the human side. And this one does have it working because you have the mad scientist and Dr. Mifune, you know, who's playing it up to eccentric levels. His daughter is there in Katsura, which, because the alien saved her life, turning her into a cyborg. Cyborg. And they had him under their thumb. Dr. Mifune is under their thumb, but he also wants to get revenge, but then later on is holding back, that kind of stuff. And, you know, but then they have to use that control over them. The aliens are played very well, over the top, exactly mustache twirling as you would expect, you know. I mean, literally the head alien is beating the guys that don't do it. And after he's done literally whipping them, he's like, and now we're going to, you know, kill you. And so we're going to punish you, and now we're going to murder you. I mean, really, it's just, you know, if you make a screw up at that point in the future, you just know, why even go back? Why report back you to the screw up? Because you know he's just going to beat, and then kill you. In that case, if you screw up, you might as well just desert. You know, just run to the hills.
I think they really didn't need to worry about the alien threat, because if he carried on with that management style, I think he would have wiped out his own people long before we had to worry about them.
Well, he would have been replaced.
He would have been replaced, yeah. I did enjoy his design for New Tokyo, though. I like the concentric circles, although I'm not really sure what they are, if they're shopping malls or cycle tracks but anyway, yeah. Good to see the aliens use standard architectural practice as well when they invade another planet.
And like another supervillain from another franchise, it's all about real estate.
Yes, exactly. Very good point. Very good point. I do have to say, just to talk about Titanosaurus again, I do feel sorry for him because, as is stated very, very clearly, he is by nature gentle and not aggressive, and he is being manipulated through this whole film. And then when the humans implant that migrainotron in the back of his head, the poor thing is suffering horribly. And I did think for a minute, well, Godzilla will help him now, because Godzilla understands that it's not his fault, and maybe Godzilla will pull the migrainotron out of his head and help him. But does he, Steve? No. Godzilla exploits the situation, beats poor Titanosaurus up from behind, and throws him into the sea. And I just thought, well, I guess maybe Godzilla had to have his moments, because he did take a little bit of a pounding from Titanosaurus earlier in the film. But I do feel sorry for him. And I hope that somewhere in the ocean, he's been able to get rid of that nasty device, and he's having a happy life down in the ocean depths.
Well, as long as they're not hitting the switch on that thing and aiming it at him, he's, it's in his head. It's like stuck on him, but he's not getting hit with the waves, the sonic wave.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. Titanosaurus has to have the best bite strength of any of the Godzilla monsters, and he's got to also have the strongest neck muscles, because he bites Godzilla in the mouth, then lifts him up in the air.
Perpendicular.
Yeah, and I'm just like, man, that just shows y'all some strength there, because he's just using his bite and his head to lift him up in that long neck, and just be like, I'm taller than you, you're off the ground now, and that kind of thing. So and I think now, after having that done to you, if you're not going to be like, oh yeah, man, let's peace out. No, you're going to get your couple of punches in just to make sure the guy remembers, don't come back. Just stay in the water, way, way far from here. Go back to being calm and docile. Don't come back to my area.
Even if he's been horribly distracted by a colossal headache at the time. But yes, I think Titanosaurus actually literally dancing on Godzilla's grave was probably the final straw. But it was quite interesting. I loved how they had the aerial shots of the monsters. I don't know if that's unusual in a Godzilla film. I mean, obviously you had the low angle shots as well, and they were very, very effective. Particularly when Titanosaurus first appears and he bursts out of the ocean, you've got the sky behind him. You get a real sense of scale. But then when they do the absolute opposite later in the film, where you're looking down on the monsters from a great distance, you'd think logically that would only kind of take some of their power away. It would make them look small. But in terms of visual storytelling, I thought it worked really, really well. But I couldn't help but notice that when Titanosaurus is jumping up and down on the buried Godzilla, he appears to be holding his hands behind his back like he's doing, I don't know, some sort of Highland fling. It was a nice touch.
Well, we each have our own dancing style, so...
Exactly. He was dancing like nobody was watching. But I really did enjoy the fight scenes, because they were so ridiculous at times. And I loved how Godzilla seems to become a boxer. He was really leaning in there with the 1, 2, 3, particularly when he finally reached Mechagodzilla, when he sort of drove his way through, it seemed, just about every weapon that Mechagodzilla had at his disposal. Just kept on coming. And that was the really impressive thing as well. Those suits were on fire at some point. Is that an unusual thing for a Godzilla film, or
no,
was that a health and safety disaster?
There are stories you could read about what happens in those suits and suit actors. I believe the original Godzilla suit actor, I think he had to get an appendectomy, and he was still in the suit, and that kind of thing.
Good grief!
So there are.
Wow.
I think there are all these stories that the experts would be able to tell you way more about. But what I love about this one is when Godzilla is running that gauntlet, so to speak, when he's going through every distance weapon that Mechagodzilla has, and this goes on for a good bit of the movie. I mean, this isn't like a couple seconds. This is drawn out to show you that Godzilla is going through no man's land, so to speak, taking everything that Mechagodzilla's dishing out, and yet he keeps coming, showing that unrelenting nature that is the Godzilla, that everybody loves, that he's unstoppable force. And regardless of whether it's a man-made or alien-made or whatever type technology, if he makes his mind up, he is coming for you, and you're not going to be a happy dude once Godzilla gets to you. But there are a couple scenes in this where I think the Gamera movies had an effect, or because they're aiming at children, the scene where you saw the two children just pop up and getting...
yes.
And Godzilla suddenly just appears out of nowhere. So he must have stealth mode, and just comes right up to Titanosaurus and, knocks him down. So there's, and he did another time where he just came out of nowhere, like, oh, there's Godzilla, where'd he go? Well, there he is, so it's, but for pacing wise, in some movies you would see Godzilla moving from like swimming or coming from a distance, and working his way through the area. They just cut right to the chase. He's there. You don't need to see the travel log that Godzilla took, because that's not pertinent. You just, there he is, and the other guys are going to suffer.
I think I must admit it was a good entrance. I really did enjoy that with the music and the close up and his silhouette. I thought that worked extremely well, because one thing that really interests me is that I picked this film, as I say, but didn't realize that it does have a special significance, and that is that, as you say, this was the last of the Showa era Godzilla films. And because it didn't perform well, in fact, it was one of the lowest performing Godzilla films, Toho actually put Godzilla into hibernation for almost a decade after this film, which these days, where Godzilla seems to be everywhere. In fact, we've got a television series starting this month on Apple TV. We've got another Japanese movie. There's probably things I've even forgotten about that I haven't mentioned. Oh, yes, of course, there's the sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong. So Godzilla, possibly more than ever, seems to be everywhere. And I find it quite incredible to sort of look back to 1975, 1976, where Godzilla was actually put into storage for all that time. Amazing. Almost 10 years without Godzilla.
Yeah, Godzilla Minus One, which will have already been, probably when this episode comes out, will already be out. And the news for that coming out is all amazing, because it's already opened in Japan. And then people that have seen it are already calling it a classic and saying it's one of the best Godzilla movies ever, bringing back the terror part of Godzilla. But we'll talk about that another time. One thing that we do on Hammerama, not all the time, but most of the time, is we talk about the posters. And
yes.
And listeners know, because Alistair, being a graphic artist, and really fine tunes and looks at the posters, I'm going to give some of my layperson input first, because if Alistair goes first, and there's nothing really to say afterwards, you're already. So I'm looking at the Japanese poster, and for the listeners, go pop it up on YouTube. Not YouTube, but internet search. You'll see it pop right up, and we're looking at the one that has Mechagodzilla to the left, Titanosaurus in the middle, Godzilla to the right, and on the very bottom, it has a picture of three of the main actors in a normal photo format, and all the language is in Japanese. So to give you an idea, and it's pretty much what I get from, I'm looking at this. Now, obviously, I don't understand what the words are, but and I know you don't either. But look, it looks like you see Tokyo, all in orange, and they got the flame going. But I like how they did the flame in that it's orange, but then it turns above it to blue. And the way they make the flame look, it looks like a wave, because they're trying to make it go into an aquatic type theme, because of Titanosaurus, who you see standing in the water with his tail twirling, or, I know this only from the movie, spinning, causing that, because you see his tail open up that fin part, and he can make water do a lot of things, say this for listeners, or he can cause the air, as like Mothra or Rodan would do in a typical Godzilla movie, and it's causing like a cyclone of water to go up into the atmosphere behind him. And you see the spaceships over Godzilla, and Godzilla's using his breath weapon on Titanosaurus's leg, or, it looks like from that, you see Mechagodzilla using his beam weapon. So they're all using some type of special weapon that they all have. And of course they're towering over the background and that kind of thing. And it's pretty cool, because you can tell right away from the picture, it's Godzilla versus 2. So it's 1 against 2. And you can see roughly what they all bring to the party, because Titanosaurus being the new one, the other 2 would have been known commodities. Or like yourself, this could be somebody's first movie. And so I think when you're looking at it, you're like, man, if I'm looking at this poster, I'm thinking I'm going to get some nice monster action. I'm going to get 3 different monsters, one I've never seen before. And I'm kind of curious how this is going to go. The aliens are in there, so you're going to get some kind of, stuff that they're doing. And so I think this is, so I think this poster does sell what the movie is going to be bringing to you, except for the human story. You have no idea what's going on in the human story.
Yes. I don't really have much more to add, Steve. You really summed that up well. From a design point of view, I really love the use of color. Once again, orange flame-like tones seem to be very predominant, especially at the bottom of the poster with Tokyo in flames. I love how Godzilla's breath is the same color, but it's cutting almost at 45 degrees across the center of the poster, which gives a nice bit of visual tension there. I see that Mechagodzilla is also firing his, are they finger missiles, hand missiles, which I'm happy to see, because that's his favorite feature of mine. And in the center, we have Titanosaurus. Looks like the artist might not have actually seen the creature. He's sort of given a vague interpretation of something that looks more like a traditional dragon, sea dragon, which is absolutely fine. That represents him well enough. But the thing that really strikes me about this poster, and I know that this is one of those cultural quirks which has lasted a long, long time, and that is, Steve, what color is Godzilla on the poster?
He's green.
He's green. Now, in my limited experience, very, very limited experience, Godzilla is almost never green in the movies that I've seen, or at least seen stills from. But more often than not, when he's represented in art form style, he's green. And in fact, that 1990s Godzilla film that we're not talking about made a big thing about green being the color of Godzilla, even though even Zilla wasn't green. So, yes, as I say, it's one of those cultural quirks that people associate the color green with Godzilla, when in fact, on screen, I don't know if he ever was. Possibly in the 2000s, maybe they had a green Godzilla, but he was almost never that color. As I say, he was generally a sort of slunchy color. But the last thing I'll say about this poster is that I just love, like you, I love the design of Mechagodzilla. And before we started this podcast, I reenacted this film the way I thought it should go, with a beautiful little kit set model of Mechagodzilla, which I have in my hand at the moment. Sorry, listeners, that you can't see that. And I think vaguely the correct version of Godzilla. Like you, Steve, I wasn't really that impressed with the Godzilla versus Kong version. I loved how he went all out on Godzilla's hide, but really he was kind of the Transformers version of Mechagodzilla. He's just sort of showing that he's a CGI construct, so obviously they can They can make him look far more mechanical. But design-wise, I think the original Mechagodzilla really, really was wonderful piece of work. Had they altered the design much from his first appearance, Steve, or is he pretty much the same in this film?
He's pretty much the same. You know, I'm sure there's some small alterations if I was to look at the two, but to me, he looks, you know, just quick look, he would look the same to me. And to go back to the Godzilla versus King Kong Mechagodzilla, he reminds me of like if some child had an erector set nowadays, and if you told him to make a Mechagodzilla, that's what it'd be. It'd be like the erector set version, and you know, which would be, you know, a pretty good likeness considering that type of material. If that's all you have. You know, I'd give the person credit, but when you have a huge budget and you're doing CGI, I wanted to be a little more traditional.
Yep.
Type of thing.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, but you know, a really exciting poster. The KAIJU movie posters are an art form all on their own. Generally, they're much the same. You've got the monsters occupying most of the poster, and your eye line is generally quite low so that you're looking up at them. And it's exciting, and yeah, I would have gone and seen this if it had ever come to New Zealand, which it didn't.
Well, you should talk to theater goers and theater owners and say to them, hey, I want a Godzilla marathon. You know, come on. Because the new movie's coming out. You can say, look, let's just put on some of these old Godzilla movies and just let me go there and for a weekend and let me enjoy myself and eat popcorn and have a soda and get some candy or whatever and act like you're 12-year-old Alistair watching Godzilla. And you can have a cardboard drawn Titanosaurus for this movie, and you could be holding it up in the crowd.
I can wave it around, and I can learn the Godzilla dance, which is one of the best memes I've ever seen in my life.
And you have to love it for the version we watched at the end of the little like Godzilla history, and I'm using the air quotes because like Alistair said, it's not exactly accurate. They do show the Godzilla dance, the Godzilla jig.
Yeah, that's one thing I can say about this movie. It does have some great dance moves.
And it's a fun movie. And final thoughts, Alistair, for Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Okay. Well, Steve, apart from all the good-natured ribbing that I give you, I do have a huge fondness for Godzilla and certainly a lot of respect for... it's more than a franchise. It's a cultural monolith. It spreads across all kinds of media, and I have to admire the fact that although we're talking about a film which actually paused Godzilla's career for nearly a decade, now in 2023, we've got major budgeted movies still coming out. We've got a television series, a big budget television series about to start. I have to admire Godzilla's longevity and vitality that all these decades later, he can literally be bigger than he ever has been before. Kong is my guy and always will be. So I think with Godzilla, like Kong's attitude perhaps, it's more an attitude of respect rather than love. But I really enjoyed the opportunity to actually dip into a Godzilla movie from the 1970s. And to my delight, I really enjoyed it, not just for the big monster action, which was great, but for the human interaction. You and I know, have both been involved in martial arts in our past, and I've always had a great respect for Eastern culture, and I'm sure that you have too. And so I found absolutely nothing to mock here. The dubbing didn't bother me. The differences in cultural attitudes didn't bother me at all. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I especially loved the fact that this was written by a woman and that the main character, even though she was a cyborg, was also a woman, the lovely Capsule. Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, my final thoughts are pretty much going to mimic yours in a lot of ways. Again, watching this growing up, just enjoying it, seeing it in the later 70s, into the 80s, and having that fun of watching these three monsters go at it, having the human story, which was, again, enjoyable to watch, because sometimes the human story is not as entertaining, and you're just waiting for Godzilla or whatever monster he's fighting to show up to keep your interest going. Katsura does an excellent, the character going through the movie. I love her self-sacrifice at the end, which is, again, something common with the culture, doing the best, even though the love interest couldn't do it himself. She ends up doing it and take care of the situation, which is so cultural norm. And it just shows that she is, in a sense, one of the villains, but also the heroes, and because her heart was never in it. And, how she knew what she had to do in order to save Japan, the earth, everything. And also knowing that this is the final film for two Godzilla mainstays in the creative side with director Ishirō Honda. This was his final Godzilla film, I think his final film altogether. And the same thing with Akira Ifune, who was his music. This was also his final one, from my understanding. So, these two gentlemen that helped usher in Godzilla from the beginning through most of his pictures in the Showa era, or a good portion of them, and to know that this was their final hurrah, and to find out that it's still not as well received as other films is just surprising to me, because it really, to me, holds up well, and I think it should be seen, for other people that, obviously that the two Mechagodzilla movies should be done back to back, a nice double feature, so you can go right from one to the other and enjoy it. And I think it's just a solid film, and anybody that is a monster fan should enjoy this. Obviously, all the kaiju fans, you already know about this movie, and we're trying to do a take where we're, because there's so many different podcasts out there that talk about Godzilla that have gone over so many different details, and they are the experts, and there's no way to beat them. There's tons of books written on it, and it's the same approach we do with Hammerama, where you can't out-expert the experts, and it's already been said. So it's just a matter of two film enthusiasts looking at it and trying to give their approach to give people to understand these differences. And I think with Godzilla, this is the way to go about it nowadays. And, because it's just impossible to repeat.
Agreed. And I'm really happy personally that I've given you the chance, Steve, to talk about your love of Godzilla, because when we discuss a film, more often than not, it seems to be me that chooses it. So it's been really nice talking about your favorite big lizard with you. I hope you've enjoyed it too.
Oh, well, anytime you asked me, we could talk about your favorite Godzilla, so they're all my favorites. So it's except for the one that shall not be named. But it's just...
But we out. We've talked about it a lot, actually.
Well, yes, it happens. And but the main thing is, I want to thank you, Alistair, for joining me to help me out and to help Derek out with Monster Kid Radio. And Derek, we hope you and Beth are having an enjoyable time in Kuwait, and I hope everything is going well for you there. And listeners, we hope you enjoyed this, and send feedback to Derek and give him support, and hopefully he'll be back soon enough. I don't know when this episode is coming out, so I'm not sure if it'll be the end of his trip or early on in his trip. Somewhere in his trip, this episode will be coming out. So I hope everything is going well, and I hope everybody's having a good time and enjoying Monster Kid Radio.
What he said. Thanks so much for having me, Steve. It's been a blast. It's been an atomic breath blast. Thanks a lot.
I'm glad we're converting you little by little to the Godzilla fandom. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for talking kaiju with us here on the podcast this week. I would love to hear from you if you have thoughts on Godzilla Minus One, on the Terror of Mechagodzilla, on anything kaiju related or anything Monster Kid Radio related, we'd love to hear from you. Email me at monsterkidradio@gmail.com or call and leave us a voicemail by calling our voicemail line. It's area code 360-524-2484. I'll put you in a future episode of Monster Kid Radio. I'd love to make you part of the show. The best way to find anything you need to know about Monster Kid Radio is by going to our website at monsterkidradio.net. Here you're going to find links to everything that we've ever talked about here on the show, including links to Alistair's website, to the Diecast Movie Podcast's website, and everything else that we talked about here on the show, and a link to that YouTube video that I was telling you about earlier that Matt Rashley sent me. It is on the YouTube channel. I don't read or speak Japanese, so let's try this. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but if you go to YouTube and just look up Godzilla Minus One, this would not be possible in Hollywood, or follow the link in the show notes and you can check out that YouTube video. It's about a half-hour conversation. The director of Godzilla Minus One and the show's host, and it's just joyful and fun and makes you love movies even more, even more than just Godzilla movies, just film in general, and the excitement that they have talking about being fans. It's just a really cool video. So grateful that Matt sent me that link. And of course, I've shared it on Facebook, so you might have already seen it. Speaking of Facebook, you can find links to our Facebook page, our Twitter page, our Facebook group, our Discord, our Patreon, and our Reddit over on monsterkidradio.net. So go check that out. Also, you're going to find a link to our brand new Big Cartel shop. Now, we've been kind of sort of figuring out the best way to sell our shirts. Y'all have seen some of the shirts that I do, the Hawaiian style shirts, you know, the movie poster collage or the Crestwood House tribute shirt. Well, if you go to deathdesigns.bigcartel.com, and death is spelled D-E-T-H, that's D-E from Derek, T-H from Beth, deathdesigns.bigcartel.com. You can find out where you can buy Hawaiian-style shirts of the classic monster movie poster collage shirt, the Crestwood House tribute shirt, the movie theater popcorn shirt, the 3D glasses shirt, and a Lego shirt. Right now, those are the only items for sale at this shop. But if I can generate enough sales and justify paying more to have more items for sale over at Big Cartel, we'll start blowing this out and adding even more. The Hawaiian style shirts are $40 a pop. They go from extra small up to like 7X. And that's free shipping here in the States. If you're somewhere else, let me know and we'll work out shipping rates to where you are. But here in the States, free shipping, $40 for a Hawaiian shirt. If you need custom designs made of any kind or have an idea for a shirt that you'd like for yourself, drop me a line at monsterkidradio@gmail.com. And we'll talk. We'll figure something out. We also want to do other merch as well, other t-shirts, leggings, dresses, mouse pads, because people still use mouse pads, I guess. We're going to have a lot of different things that we'd like to make available for sale, including the mail order zombie zine that's going to be coming out sometime this spring. The first issue will be available either here or on Amazon. Pay attention to monsterkidradio.net. That's where you're going to find everything. What's coming up next week here on the show? You know, I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. Give me 1 second and I'll check my files.
Dracula! He's come back!
Sander, look at me. What do you see in my eyes?
Death.
Do you like jewels, Lily? This is very old and very beautiful. Please don't come any closer. Pulse is weak, Dr. Goss. Growing weaker. All your skill can't help her now. She's under a spell that can be broken only by me. or death. I am Dracula's daughter.
You know what? Let's get back to the Dracula family reunion. You heard Kevin Slick on this week's episode of the show. Let's hear him again next week when he comes back to talk about Dracula's daughter. Yes, I know this is a movie that we've talked about here on the show in the past, but it's been a while, and I love getting different points of view and viewpoints. Those are the same things, but I love getting the different points of view and different takes on these movies from different people. So we're going to continue the Dracula family reunion with Dracula's daughter next week, and then we'll do Son of Dracula the week after that. You like that? I like that. That's what we're going to do. Until next week, remember that Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio, LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio, LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 unported license. Of course, that doesn't apply to the song Confrontation Part 2. That is copyright 2023 from the band The Baharibas. It is from their album Tinten Fisch Geflüster. You can find that at thebaharibas.bandcamp.com or follow the link in the show notes. My name's Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week. Ciao.